Hello, this video is for participants in CSIRO's on-prime pre-accelerated program. It's one of a series of videos showing you how to use Cahoot, our online communication and interview logging tool. The first video in this series introduced you to Cahoot and showed you how to use it for communication between prime participants, facilitators, mentors, and the CSIRO on team. The second video showed you the basics of using Cahoot for logging customer interviews. This third video is about Cahoot's tools for analysis of interviews, including the generation of insights. As the previous video explained, interview logging in Cahoot takes place in the course called My Team. Under Course Modules, Discovery. Many prime teams go into the prime program with the goal of identifying an attractive target market for their technology. That is, a market in which there's a strong fit between the pains felt by customers in that market and the pain relief that could be provided by a product or a service based on the team's technology. These teams interview customers in potential target markets to learn about their pains and to validate or invalidate the team's hypotheses about these pains. So in this example, my imaginary team has interviewed these 7 customers shown here in 2 target market segments, military radar and public safety navigation. As you might remember from the previous video, my imaginary team that I'll use in this example is based on a real team called Sapphire Clock from Adelaide University, who went through the first version of Prime back in 2016. My imaginary team wants to understand in which of these 2 market segments is our tech more likely to create impact and make a difference. We've created these 4 hypotheses, 2 for each of our target market segments. And these hypotheses are about the existence of problems or pains in these segments that our technology, our high-performance oscillator, might potentially relieve. So if we look at interviews, at this stage, my imaginary team has done 1 interview with each of our customers. And in each of these interviews, we've tested 1 of our 4 hypotheses. So if we go back to hypotheses, we see that the first 2 hypotheses, these 2 here, have each been tested in 2 interviews. And each of the interviewees in those interviews has supported the hypotheses. So you'll see here that Cahoot assigns what it calls a weight of 2 to each of these hypotheses. Our third hypothesis was also tested in 2 interviews, and neither of those interviewees supported the hypothesis. So it has a weight of -2. Our fourth hypothesis was tested in 1 interview, and that interview didn't support it. So its weight is -1. So you can see how the larger the positive weight is for a hypothesis, the more comfortable we'll feel in saying that the hypothesis has been validated. And the larger the negative weight is for a hypothesis, the more comfortable we'll feel saying that the hypothesis has been invalidated. So that's an explanation of the weight function in Cahoot. Let's now look at how Cahoot handles learnings and insights. So let's look at one of our interviews. Let's look at interview number 4. So in this interview, we tested 1 hypothesis, and that hypothesis was supported. So in this interview, we recorded, in addition to validating that hypothesis, we also recorded this second learning here, learning number 2. And this learning is more specifics about the interview supporting the hypothesis. We also recorded another important thing that we learned, unrelated to this hypothesis, but about the likelihood of our technology creating impact in this sector. Let's have a look at another interview here. Interview number 3. And you'll see a similar thing here. Let's imagine that in interview 3, we also learned more about the hypothesis that we tested, this hypothesis number 2. And let's imagine that we also learned some additional information about what it would take for our technology to make a difference to this customer. That's insight 1. So the insight function in Cahoot enables us to cluster together a related group of learnings from our customer interviews to derive an insight. And in the terminology that's used in Cahoot, which is also the terminology that we use in Prime, an insight is a customer validated statement about the impact potential of our idea. So when you first go to the Cahoot Insights tab, this tab here, you'll see a list of all the learnings that you've created from all of your customer interviews. And you can click on a subset of related learnings to create an insight. So, for example, my imaginary team has already grouped these 5 learnings here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, from some of our previous interviews to create this insight that one of our target market segments is an attractive one for us because a real problem exists here that our technology might solve. This learning or this insight says that our hypothesis about this market has been validated. Down here at the bottom of the screen, my team's created another insight about this market segment based on these 3 learnings. And if we go back up to the top, we could create a new insight about the military radar market segment based on these 2 remaining learnings. These 2 learnings, as you can see, haven't been grouped into any other insights so far. So to create a new insight, we select these 2 learnings, this one and this one, and we click Create New Insight. We give this insight a name, and this is the most difficult part. What we want to do here is summarize the insight here, and in this case, the name I'm going to give this one is Military Radar, one of our market segments, is challenging because defense forces are not early adopters of new tech. So then we click Create New Insight, and that takes us back to the insights list, and you'll see that the new insight has been created here, complete with a spelling mistake, and you'll also see that all of the learnings have now been associated with a particular insight. So that means there are no more learnings shown in this list. When we do more interviews and record more learnings, they'll appear here, and we can associate them with an existing insight by clicking Add to Existing Insight, or we can use them to create a new insight as we just did. So, in this video, we've seen how to use Cahoot's tools for analysis of interviews. We've seen how Cahoot's weights help us see trends in our interviews towards validation or invalidation of our hypotheses. We've seen how we can record learnings in our interview records, and these learnings are details about the interviewee's support or lack of support of our hypotheses and other things that we might learn about the likelihood of creating impact with our technology. And we've seen how we can cluster together related learnings to create insights, customer validated statements about the impact potential of our technology. That's it. This is the last of our Cahoot instructional videos. I hope you found them useful. Enjoy Prime and enjoy your interviews.